After the disastrous failure of X-Men Origins Wolverine and the critical failure of The Last Stand, Fox scrapped their plans for an upcoming X-Men Origins Magneto film and an X-Men film focusing on the young members of the team. Not wanting to abandon the franchise but recognizing the need to have to take a new direction, Fox approached Matthew Vaughn, director of Kick-Ass and the Kingsman films, to make a new X-Men movie. Being a fan of the X-Men, Vaughn couldn't reject the offer, especially since he was given the job to direct X3 but abandoned it shortly after, not feeling like he could make a good film and meet the time limit he was given. Ironically, he had even less time to make this one, being given only 13 months until release date with no script. So he and Jane Goldman, writer of this film, in only 3 weeks took the leftover remains of the two cancelled X-Men films and came up with X-Men First Class, which focused on how a young Eric Lensher and Charles Xavier became friends, then enemies, while simultaneously trying to stop a madman former Nazi scientist Sebastian Shaw from enabling the Cuban Missile Crisis, killing most humans but giving birth to more mutants, which he plans on leading. How the fuck am I saying these lines without a teleprompter? And even though this film took place in the past, it was originally conceived as a soft reboot, which is why there are a lot of changes from the original trilogy lore. Such as Hank building Cerebro rather than Eric and Charles, Eric having a helmet that blocks telepathy in the 60s rather than acquiring it in the 2000s, Murray McTaggart being a young CIA agent in the 60s rather than a middle-aged IR scientist in the 2000s, Mystique having a familial connection with Charles, Charles losing the ability to walk in the 60s, and Eric and Charles becoming friends in their 20s and separating in the 60s. Most of these changes were small, which at the first viewing would go unnoticed, but after rewatching the entire film series, it becomes very obvious that this film was never supposed to connect to those ones. Regardless, X-Men First Class is still a genuinely phenomenal film, perfectly showing off what makes Charles and Eric's relationship so different from every other comic book character's rivalry, why the audience should care for Magneto, and how the X-Men and Brotherhood came to be. All of that and much more was accomplished in only 13 months of production. Other than Beast prosthetics looking a bit off in certain scenes, you wouldn't be able to tell that this film was rushed with how well written, shot, directed, and cast it was. Speaking of the casting, it's genuinely mind-blowing how this franchise wasn't just able to perfectly cast Professor X and Magneto once, but twice. James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender elevated this film to such a degree where I wasn't just invested in their characters, but dreading the moment where they would have to split up, and when that moment does come, you can tell and feel all the emotions they're going through just from the way they look at each other. And the leads aren't the only well-casted characters in the film. Kevin Bacon masterfully plays Sebastian Shaw, the villain of the movie, who's essentially a reflection of the man Eric will become one day. A fanatic who's ready to kill every human on Earth to lead all of mutant kind. But that's not the entire character. Kevin Bacon still plays him in a way where he feels like a completely different person, not just an allegory for Magneto. Shaw is charming and always has a sense of control in every situation he's in. And his ability to absorb kinetic energy is represented in such a unique and visually pleasing way. I do have a few nitpicks of this film, those being Hank McCoy feeling nothing like the character we saw in X3, and not in the way where Charles and Eric purposely felt like different people who could become the characters we knew. No, Hank just felt like a completely different person. Moira McTaggart and Charles' romance coming out of nowhere, Darwin's nonsensical death, and the continuity errors in this film, which don't annoy me that much since I know it was supposed to be a reboot, but while binging the whole series, it can still get annoying. But other than that, I adore everything about this film. The writing, the cinematography, the acting, the creative editing, the costumes which finally have some color in them, and the amazing score by Henry Jackman, especially Frankenstein's monster, which is just so good. I even love the credits of this film, which depict the X gene mutating and spreading onto others. There isn't a single thing I don't like about this film. I feel comfortable calling it the X-Men film that's the closest to being perfect, easily outranking X2.
All right, Logan, I need you to clear your head and to stay as calm as possible.
What? What do you mean?
If your mind gets rocky, it'll be harder for me to hold you. You could start to slip between past and future.
What if I need to get a little rocky?
Think peaceful thoughts?
Imagine making a genuine masterpiece and then going, nah, I can do better. X-Men Days of Future Past is this universe's equivalent to Infinity War and Endgame, a big crossover featuring a huge cast of returning characters facing the biggest threat yet. A threat so big that the only way it could lose is if it never won. X-Men did it first, baby! Sadly, Matthew Vaughn didn't return to direct this movie because Fox didn't let him make it the finale of his planned trilogy, instead rushing to it right after First Class. So the only involvement he had with this film was writing its story alongside the returning Jane Goldman and screenwriter Simon Kinberg. Now, despite all that and the fact that we were robbed of what could have been the greatest comic book trilogy of all time, X-Men Days of Future Past is hands down my favorite mainline X-Men film. The film focuses on Wolverine getting sent back in time to 1973 to stop Mystique from assassinating Bolivar Trask, creator of the Sentinels, which are improved upon and used to hunt mutants after his death. Improved to such a level thanks to Mystique's DNA that they have completely taken over in the world and nearly wiped out anyone with an X gene.
Look, in the beginning, the Sentinels were just targeting mutants. And they began to identify the genetics in non-mutants who would eventually have mutant children or grandchildren. Many of the humans tried to help us. It was a slaughter. Fuck yourself.
Logan recruits a powerless but walking Charles, Beast but not really Beast because he has more in common with the Hulk, and Peter Maximoff, Quicksilver, so they can break out Magneto. He's in there for killing JFK.
Nothing bad ever happens to the Kennedys!
When the group reach Mystique seconds before she can kill Trask, Eric decides that the only way they can actually ensure their future is if the humans never get a hold of Mystique's DNA to improve the Sentinels, so he tries to kill her. Logan is too busy having a panic attack from seeing a young William Stryker, so it's up to Beast to save Mystique alone, which he does, but Magneto escapes with the Sentinel schematics. Eric takes this opportunity to fill the Sentinels being sent to the White House with metal, while the group manages to locate Mystique, who's also heading to the White House, thanks to Charles' regained will and telepathy.
And PBS.
Magneto drops a stadium around the White House, takes aim at every politician and leader inside the presidential bunker, and drowns the Wolverine, which are endangered and he should know better. Thankfully, Mystique stops Magneto and saves all the politicians and leaders inside, and Charles convinces her not to kill Trask, to leave a hero, not a murderer, which changes the future. So while Logan is drowning and losing consciousness, he suddenly wakes up at the mansion and finds out that not only are all his friends alive, but so are Jean and Scott, signifying that this is a completely new timeline, a better timeline for our heroes.
You and I have a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah.
Also Apocalypse. Before I dive into my thoughts about this film, I first want to say that its plot is framed in a very easy to digest way, not jumping between different characters and timelines too much, although there is a different cut of the film called The Rogue Cut. X-Men did it first, baby! I mean, technically Superman first, but whatevs. Which includes more scenes in the future, a subplot where Mystique destroys Cerebro, this great interaction between Logan and Peter's sister.
I'm a princess. What are you?
I'm the Wolverine.
And surprisingly Rogue. I highly recommend that cut of the film over the theatrical one because it gives the future cast more to do than just wait and die. A lot of fans consider this film to be the definitive ending to the X-Men, and I completely understand why. It manages to do what The Last Stand should have, but on a much larger scale. Give the present-day X-Men a satisfying ending. They even have a last stand of their own until they're all saved in the last possible second. And it wasn't just the future X-Men who were done justice, but the past ones too. Even though it seems like Wolverine is the star of the film and has the biggest presence on the poster, when it comes down to it, this is Charles' story. He's the one who has to go through an emotional roller coaster, he's the one who has to change to save the world, and he's the one who does exactly that by finally maturing and believing in Raven. For a film with incredibly large stakes and time travel, it has a lot of scenes that focus solely on characters, relationships, and feelings, and I love it for that. Instead of focusing on the big, powerful bad guys, the film fully focuses on its characters' dynamics and emotional states. The only reason Mystique goes after Trask is because he killed her friends. The only reason Charles helps Logan is because he wants to get Raven back, and the only reason Magneto does everything he did is because he deeply cares about his people's rights and safety. The only characters who are doing this purely to save the world are Logan, Beast, and the rest of the future cast, so mainly side characters and one kind of main character, and I adore that about the film. The film separates itself from other team-up films by having a reason that isn't just centered on saving the world. Charles even says this to Logan early on when he tries to scare him into complying with that reason in mind.
Listen to me, you little shit. I've come a long way, and I've watched a lot of people die, good people and friends. If you want to wallow in self-pity and do nothing, then you're going to watch the same thing, you understand? We all have to die sometime.
And that's just tipping the iceberg of what I love about this film. Its action changed the genre when it comes to how super speed is represented. I dare you to think of just 5 examples in film that don't outright copy or take inspiration from Quicksilver's iconic kitchen scene. And it isn't just Quicksilver, we get some great spectacles from Magneto too, who's looking almost as good as he did in the end of First Class, and watching the X-Men fight the Sentinels is both horrifying and epic. And the cast of this film is just so phenomenal. Almost everyone here is giving their A game, even Jennifer Lawrence, who still cares enough about these films to deliver a solid performance performance unlike her future appearances. But the highlights of the film are Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, Hugh Jackman, Sir Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen. Starting with the latter, Sir Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen with so little time deliver great performances as their characters, and their final scene together is such a wonderful payoff to their characters' long but difficult friendship. And going to the younger pair, James McAvoy gives it his all in this film, making you sympathize with Charles because of everything he went through. He gets a lot to play off, with his character's medicine being an allegory for heroin. The way he looks, stares, and acts changes over time in the film, subtly showing Charles finding himself again. And every scene he shares with Eric is so captivating to watch, perfectly playing off Michael Fassbender, rivaling the chemistry their older counterparts have. Speaking of Magneto, I may be a bit biased here considering Michael Fassbender is an actor I love watching in every film I've seen him in, but that's rightfully earned since this man cares so much about every single one of his performances. And this isn't an exception. Considering that Eric is older now and his older counterpart is present in the film, Fassbender subtly changed his voice and manner of speaking to match Sir Ian McKellen's, and in my opinion, his scenes have the strongest emotional punch to them. Whenever I think about this film, I always find myself rewatching the speech he makes for his brothers and sisters and the scene in the plane where he scolds Charles for abandoning his kind. Don't worry though, all couples have their rough patches and they work it out over a game of chess. And finally, Hugh Jackman, the Wolverine who has more in common with wolves than he does a specific type of weasel. There is nothing I can say that hasn't already been said about Hugh Jackman's iconic performance as Wolverine. He gives a great but calmer performance in this film, considering he can't get too emotional or he'll slip back into the present, but when things do get emotional, Hugh Jackman sells it incredibly well. Especially the scene where Logan has a panic attack, which is also the only scene in the film where Logan's claws pop out with blood.
Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
And there's still so much more left to talk about. The great score by John Ottman, the beautiful visuals, the improved costumes of the future X-Men, and even more to praise if we include the rope cut. But if I talked about everything I loved about this film, we'd be here all day, so better stop while I'm still ahead and move on to the stuff I disliked. Starting with Trask going from a tall black man in The Last Stand to a short white one here, Beast looking like a blue werewolf, and that's when he is Beast. I genuinely hate how determined the filmmakers are in making this version of the character not have his one physical defining feature: his underwear. This character has more in common with the Hulk than he does Hank McCoy, using the Beast as a transformation for action rather than him being a genius who so happens to look like that. The ending and first post-credit scene having no follow-up whatsoever, and a feeling of uncomfortableness arising when I mentioned that this is my favorite X-Men film, only to then remember the man who directed it. But film is a collaborative effort, and to condemn an entire project because one of the members was a bad person is unfair to the rest of the crew members who put their hearts and souls into making the film. And because of that, I'm gonna stick to my guns by saying that this is my favorite mainline X-Men film. Other than nitpicks really and the fault of bad planning, in my eyes this film is perfect. It achieved in doing exactly what it set out to do, a big crossover with two completely different casts and then some by injecting a lot of heart and care into it. And because of that, I would recommend this film without a shadow of a doubt, and I'm sure anyone who gives it a shot would then do the same.
Goodbye, old friend.
I love your body.
I love my body too. Every Tuesday night. And I think of you.
I'm feeling horny. Man, I wish I'd find a BBC to find.
So, you know how Matthew Vaughn left Days of Future Past because Fox rushed to it? Well, his main reason for doing that is because he believed that Days of Future Past was such a big event that there were no bigger stakes the X-Men could face after it, and he was absolutely right. Apocalypse genuinely feels like filler. If Days of Future Past was Infinity War, then this is Age of Ultron, a sequel made just to cash in on some money. But at least with Age of Ultron, we were watching characters we cared about, unlike with this film. With Matthew Vaughn and Jane Goldman gone, alongside every other writer who knew anything about X-Men beyond just the basics, we were left with successful Minecraft channel, Simon Kinberg, Dan Harris, and Michael Dougherty to helm the story. And if you're wondering just how deep their knowledge of the franchise went, this is what Psylocke's actress Olivia Munn had to say.
When I was doing X-Men, I was actually surprised that the director and the writer didn't even know that Psylocke had a twin brother. And I had to talk to them about a lot of different things about Psylocke and some other parts of the world that they didn't know. And that, as a fan, It's very frustrating.
Apocalypse focuses on Jennifer Lawrence, who doesn't care enough to put on makeup for this film. Same with Beast. Charles was just here to lose his hair. Magneto is going through the most nonsensical cliche plot possible. A new group of X-Men who are set to stop Apocalypse, the first mutant in history, and his 4 horsemen from destroying the world. Unfortunately, the new X-Men couldn't do that, so sequel bait had to do it for them. That is literally the whole film. There is no commentary about how mutant life changed since Days of Future Past, other than the fact that now Mystique is seen as a hero, which for some reason she's ashamed of, which is why she stays in her human form for the majority of the film. Definitely not because her actress stopped giving enough a shit to sit through hours of makeup but still wanted a starring role. All of the scenes that offer anything close to that or develop our new characters are deleted. So this film is missing the one thing every X-Men story should have and fails to develop its new cast, which it expects us to care about for a potential sequel. If anything, the film tarnishes its pre-established cast, which we already cared about, like Eric, for instance, who after causing the deaths of millions of people, an irredeemable act, which is just now shrugged off in a, "Oh, Eric, you silly goose, until we meet again, old friend." And it brought back Charles' first-class love interest, Moira McTaggart, who's just here to wake up Apocalypse and then do nothing else. She's not even here to develop her and Charles' relationship anymore because she has a family and kids now. No, she's just here to say hi, get her memories back, thank her God, and then fuck off. But hey, at least she did something, unlike Havoc, who's just here to chauffeur around Scott and Charles, then die. And don't get me started on Beast. It's been 21 years for this guy since First Class, and he's still ashamed of his mutation, except it's even worse now, because now he's a teacher and mentor to other mutants. He has a moral obligation to students who don't have magic heroin like he does to look normal, to show them that they have nothing to be ashamed of. But these movies have an obsession with taking these characters that represent minorities and people who are different and make them ashamed of the things that make them different, which literally embodies the phrase, "get it twisted." Yeah, Bob, you should be ashamed of yourself and inject yourself with what's an allegory for heroin for more than 20 years to fit in with human society's conventions. That's what we X-Men have been standing for and preaching for more than 60 years. And you know what we do have to say for those who are different? 2 things, these and these. And it's not just the good guys who have nothing good to contribute, but the bad guys too. Apocalypse may be comic accurate when it comes to his personality, but not at all when it comes to his Apocalypse's personality may be comic accurate, but his powers and appearance, not at all. In the comics, Apocalypse is basically Clayface but on steroids. When he turns his hand into a gun, it doesn't just look like a gun, it is a gun. In the movie, his mutation is basically other mutations he stole from other mutants over the years, which sounds cool until you realize there's nothing satisfying about watching a guy win a fight from just pulling out a new power out of his ass. But hey, at least he got his personality right, which is more than I could say for his horseman. If I could, I would ramble on for a very long time about how horribly portrayed Angel and Psylocke are in this film, but this video has to come out before the end of time. So I'll just say one more complaint I have before moving on to the positives, even though I have pages worth of complaints left to say. And that's Magneto's plot is stupid. By the end of Days of Future Past, Eric was still the same guy he was in the beginning, someone who wanted to ensure his people's rights and place in the world. Here, he set up a family with a human wife in Poland just so they could get killed by humans and he'd have a reason to join Apocalypse. Setting aside how cliche that is and how it's literally fridging, it makes no sense for Magneto to settle down with a human or settle down at all and do exactly what he scolded Charles for doing in the previous film, abandon his kind. And making him Peter's dad in this continuity makes Eric seem shallow. For someone who compared covering up Mystique to covering up a tiger, he sure as hell prefers the company of humans. And yes, I know in the comics he is Pietro's father, but for this interpretation, making it anything more than just a nice wink to the fans worsens the character, especially since this plot point is never resolved. And is this film actually unironically trying to tell us that an arrow which was shot accidentally fully impaled and instantly killed a grown woman and her child?
Are you sure?
Now, some stuff I liked about this film would be the no more weapons scene, Wolverine's cameo, Psylocke's casting and costume, and I really hope Olivia Munn gets to reprise the role and play a more faithful depiction of the character, and the suits in the end of the film. Not! Did you think I was gonna praise these pieces of shit like every other YouTuber does? Look, they may not be black leather, but that doesn't mean they're good. If you like these costumes, but hate the MCU's Ant-Man, Thor, and Spider-Man No Way Home designs, then you're a hypocrite. Because everything wrong with those costumes is wrong with these. The over-designed nature, the overabundance of random lines, the ugly colors. I wrote 4 pages worth of criticisms about everything I thought was wrong about these costumes, and if I had time, I'd read them all. But I don't, so I don't know, I might upload them on a Patreon if I ever open one. X-Men Apocalypse perfectly conveys what everyone here about the Fox X-Men movies and why they have such a bad reputation. They can be unfaithful to the comics to such a degree that they completely miss the original message that I was trying to convey. Focus on whoever in the cast has the biggest star power rather than the characters who need and deserve it. And the worst of the films are made by people who know nothing about what they're making. I'm glad that this film was made by Bryan Singer because it shows us what his X-Men films would have looked like if the producers, writers, and crew members who cared about the X-Men weren't there to carry his ass. So in conclusion, they should have stuck with Matthew Vaughn.
Don't cry, little X-Men fan. Uncle Fox got more than enough badly written X-Men films to last you your entire life. Simon! Yes, sir! Wrap another crap Dark Phoenix movie ASAP! The fan's hungry!
Dark Phoenix was the last Fox-released X-Men movie, a movie that was supposed to end off everything that was built up since the first X-Men film, and it tried to do so without even having X-Men in the title. I think this movie is the main culprit to why the Fox X-Men movies have such a bad reputation. And to explain why in a very simple way, it basically did the opposite of what Robert McKay told Donald to do while writing a screenplay and adaptation.
But wow them in the end, and you've got a hit. Find an ending, but don't cheat, and don't you dare bring in a Deus Ex Machina. Your characters must change, and the change must come from them.
How about new?
It did not wow us in the end, it did not find an ending for its characters, the characters didn't change, and you could argue that the Phoenix was a Deus Ex Machina. And for being the last X-Men film in a successful franchise, the film feels like it was made on the cheap. It has no costume designs, no set of diverse locations, and no amazing visuals to speak of, even though the film's budget was only $5 million less than Days of Future Past. This could likely be attributed to Simon Kinberg, the writer and director of this film, since this was his directorial debut. I guess writing a bad adaptation of the Phoenix Saga wasn't enough, he had to direct one too. Right off the bat, Dark Phoenix already misses the point of the story by not focusing on Scott and Jean, rather focusing on Charles's paternal relationship to Jean and her going through the changes of acquiring the Phoenix, even though she already has it, which you should know, Simon, since you wrote the film. Jean kills Mystique early on in the film because Jennifer Lawrence was contractually obligated to return, but not stay. So Magneto and Beast, a character known for his compassion and level-headedness, hunt her down for revenge. But they have a change of heart after having a conversation with Charles in a transport truck. Also because they sucked ass at it. And now that the whole team is united again, it's time for the final fight against the not Skrulls, which they managed to beat every single one of except for Fuck. Because everyone knows that the strongest beings in the universe are white blonde women.
Your beauty is your strength, and I submit to it. Take me, and let me know what it's like to be with a woman. There is nothing in this world but your power in me, the only man who can see it. Let me worship at your altar. Let me know the pleasure of a real woman.
So Jean uses her ginger wickedness, Phoenix, to defeat Fuck, sacrificing herself. Except not really, because now she's chilling in space and Charles got kicked out of his own house, but that's okay though, because now he can finally start living with his husband, as he always should have. I don't have any strong feelings for this film, other than a mild disdain for it being the film that ended off one of my favorite series of movies in a way that made everyone only remember the bad parts. The generic costumes, the inaccurate stories, the lackluster writing, just everything you heard me complain about with every other film is present. Magneto, the character who was constantly dripped out in every single appearance he was in, genuinely looks pathetic here. He only wears the helmet, no costume, no cape, and he looks sillier for it. He looks like a kid pretending to be Magneto rather than the real thing. And the X-Men are no better. I know I trashed on the suits in the end of Apocalypse, but what was the point in making them if you're not gonna use them? These suits don't even make a full X around the jacket, and they're not just bad, but they're worse than the black leather. At least those suits had more going on, with different colored highlights and details to individualize the characters' costumes. And this film just loves to waste time. It wastes time explaining how Jean got the Phoenix, even though she should already have it. It wastes time developing conflict that shouldn't be there, and it wastes time introducing villains nobody cares about. Sorry to all three of you fuck fans out there. It's so senseless, just like how Hank and Eric wanting to kill Jean is after she accidentally killed Raven. Eric is the same man who accidentally crippled his friend and in the previous timeline took Jean in after she killed Charles. He understands what it's like for mutants to accidentally hurt the people they love. And Hank is supposed to be better than this. He knows that Jean's mind has been tampered with and that she's going through some kind of physical change. But he still ignores that, lets his emotions cloud his judgment, and instigate the death of a woman who he knew since she was a child. And even though I like that it's finally being shown off and is accurate to the comics, Charles being so big-headed and egotistical absolutely doesn't make sense here, especially since he already went through an arc to stop being so. But the only way this film could work is if it bastardizes its characters and makes them act nothing like they would. I am not the biggest fan of the original Phoenix saga. To me, half of it was spent fighting an alien villain I couldn't care less about, and the other half was spent showing how important Jean and Scott were to each other, which I enjoyed. So as someone who's so-so when it comes to the original source material, even I can say that this is a disservice to it. It doesn't convey how high the stakes are, which even Apocalypse managed to do, because of how cheap it feels. I genuinely cannot believe how $200 million were put into this film. Where did it go?
How did you get so rich?
It is X-Men. I laundered $200 million worth of cash out of the budget in that year!
And it barely, if at all, focuses on Jean and Scott's relationship. What we got with Charles was nice, but it barely compares to the special connection those two have. This film can be shredded to pieces with how much is wrong with it. The uncharacteristic behavior of some characters, the lack of focus on characters who need it, the absence of visual flair, the lack of any type of real costume design, and the fact that a film that came out 13 years before this one managed to feel bigger than this 2019 film, which, may I remind you, in the same year, this came out. But this movie's biggest sin is that it decided to end a nearly 20-year-old running series of films with a husk of a character being blown up and a tease for more to come, when everyone, including Fox and the filmmakers, knew that there wasn't. But hey, at least our favorite couple get a happy ending, so 10 out of 10. Cinema, Cinemaxed.
There's no fence. No. No fence. Nothing between you and freedom. Run, you girl, run!
The New Mutants, directed by Josh Booney, who wrote it alongside Nate Lee, is the last X-Men related film made by Fox and infamously known for being delayed 4 times. The film was advertised as the first horror X-Men film, and due to the many delays, rumors sprung up, leading to people believing that due to the positive reactions, Fox was reworking the film to be R-rated. But when the film eventually released during lockdown and was still PG-13, Many just ignored it, and those who didn't lambasted it. Which is a shame, because I think this film is pretty good considering the circumstances it was made in, being caught up with Disney acquiring Fox and the many delays making it impossible for the filmmakers to do reshoots now that the child actors grew up. The film's lead is Dani Moonstar, a new mutant whose father died when her village was recently destroyed. After the incident, she wakes up in a secret institute after the event ran by Dr. Cecilia Reyes, a fellow mutant who has the ability to make domes, which she's trapping Dani and the other patients in, who are Illyana Rasputin, also known as Magic and Colossus's sister, Rain Sinclair, Sam Guthrie, also known as Cannonball, and Roberto da Costa, also known as Sunspot. Most of the patients don't trust Dr. Reyes or each other, and their distrust grows when it seems like the Institute is haunting them with horrifying visions and creatures. It's later revealed, however, that Dani's ability is to make anyone's greatest nightmare come to life, but because she can't control her abilities, Dr. Reyes' superior on off-screen Mr. Sinister orders her to kill Dani and take her DNA. After sedating Dani, Dr. Reyes is attacked by Rain, who's developed a close bond with Dani, and because of that, Reyes tries to kill the rest of the patients by suffocating them to death, but is attacked by Dani's greatest fear, which takes form as a giant bear. They gang buy enough time for Dani to wake up and conquer her fear, and now finally free from the institution and having developed a closer bond to each other, they set out to the nearest town together. I left out all of the plot and the synopsis because I know a lot of people didn't watch this film, and I don't want to spoil what the other patients go through in specific plot points. This film isn't great or anything. It doesn't compare to the highs of X2, Days of Future Past, or Logan, which it may share continuity with, but that's debatable. I'd say its quality compares to the first X-Men film, which is surprising because this film has a lower score rate than Dark Phoenix. So either everyone who watched this film is a certified hater or I'm a hack. I'd put money on the latter. Something I can say this film did better than the first X-Men film though is the character work. I can confidently say that by the end of the New Mutants, I liked every single member of the New Mutants. Dani made for a pretty interesting lead, and her being the cause of everything that happened is an obvious but cool twist which was hinted at throughout the film. And her relationship with Rain is pretty cute and felt natural for two mutant teenagers stuck together in a dome. Rain in general was the MVP of the film. She saved Dani twice and was why Dani was able to conquer her fear other than a vision of her dad, which honestly should have been Rain. Roberto is a lovable asshole who can be counted on when things get tough and has a deeper side to his character, which is explored. I also love his fire form in the film, both the actual on-fire form and the more comic accurate looking one. Sam didn't get a lot to do in this film, but what we got was great. It's so interesting to watch this guy who's basically try to intentionally hurt himself over his guilt. And even though his guilt is a big part of his character, it isn't all that he is. We see him have fun, be friendly, and he was the first one in the group to start acting like a hero. And the final member of the New Mutants, the only character everyone remembers this film for, both because of her brother and the actress who plays her, Magic. Continuing the trend of taking attributes from Kitty Pryde and giving them to other characters, in this case, her alien dragon pet, Lockheed, is now Illyana's maybe living doll. And rather than Magic being the queen of limbo, her armor forming the more she fights and her mutation being that she can teleport through time and space, the film changed it so that she can only grow a metal arm and sword, and she only teleports by passing through limbo, which she and Lockheed created, then back to Earth. But other than that, and a bad Russian accent, I enjoyed Magic in this film. She was a great antagonist to Dani until they made up, and was badass at the climax of the film. And her background and backstory are compelling. And the last character of the film and its villain, Dr. Reyes, who was honestly pretty boring. She doesn't have any intimidating factor whatsoever and only acts as a puppet for her superior, Mr. Sinister, who would have made for a more interesting and better villain. But I get it would have been too much for this team to beat him in their first film, and it was probably a better idea to save him for a potential sequel in the planned trilogy. And this was supposed to be a planned trilogy of films, but because it was made in the worst possible time, this team's full story never got to be told. Which is a shame because the cast plays off each other very well, they're fun to watch, and it would have been rewarding to watch these New Mutants develop into X-Men. I really loved this film. It was a nice surprise when I was expecting another shit show after Dark Phoenix. It was a solid first outing for this team, which still managed to be entertaining even with everything going against it. Ranging from studio interference, the pandemic, and a relatively low budget for a superhero film. Do I ever plan on watching this film again? No. But would I still recommend it? Well, to any X-Men and horror fans, yeah, why not?
Don't be rash.
First of all, thanks so much to making it this far into the video. I really appreciate it, and thank you, like genuinely, thank you so much for making it this far. And if you watched the previous part and then this, like, really thank you. I really appreciate it that you really stuck around. I'm so happy with how the previous video turned out. I really thought it was gonna bomb because originally I wanted this video to come out during a Deadpool and Wolverine, and I completely missed the mark with that one, and somehow I still got more than 1,000 views. I didn't even just get 1,000 views. I got 2,100 views at the time of recording now. And like, genuinely, it's so mind-blowing. I didn't know that was gonna happen. I genuinely thought it was gonna fall. I thought I would be lucky if I got like 200 views or something. I did. It's like the highest views in my channel right now. So genuinely, like, thanks so much. I'm really happy about that. I can't even talk properly. So, you know, if you really liked this video, and if you didn't watch the previous one, please check it out. And if you like this one and the previous one, then please make sure to lick, subscribe, turn on the not feed button. No, it's not. It's please make sure to lick, subscribe, turn on the not fiction button, and comment down below. Also, a huge thanks to Commander for making the channel's banner and the kissing picture here of Charles and Eric, and maybe the thumbnail. I'm not sure yet. But yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.